Hello everyone, this is part 10 of What If Naruto Was Born in the Uzumaki clan, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. He burned holes into the blank wall in front of him. He hated hospitals. He hated the doom they evoked in him. And he hated people staring at him the way the current group in the godforsaken room were doing. Akeno was livid. He could practically feel her glare from the side as she finished nursing his and all the parts that had got torn during his fight with his father. He should be given that he faced the yellow flash. If only the world knew who he was, then they would know he was hard to kill even for that man. He had an ambition worth living for. A dream he couldn't afford to fail by. A future he would everything for. Including himself. It was this self-destructive persona that made him invincible and a force to be reckoned with. He never had anything to lose to begin with, and it was why he was chosen to be Izu's sword. Even after the village's untimely demise, their weapon was still doing its job like it was trained to. Unfortunately, his friends didn't understand that. And neither did the people of maybe except for Yahiko, who was currently also getting death glares from Conan. Where the hell did you two disappear to? Seethed Akeno, barely restraining her urge to strangle her friend. If she didn't have feelings for him, she would have killed him herself for nearly. The wounds he had received were grave and were evidence of a serious fight. Personal stuff. Akeno gaped. She literally stared at him in shock as Nagato nursed his forehead with a sigh. These two were like ice and fire. Yahiko must be giving a similar answer as Conan rounded up on him as well with a pointed look in her eyes. What the hell did you do? She practically hissed. Too bad she was trying to interrogate a trainer who had barriers and baggage taller than the famous mountain of Konoha. Naruto stared back at all of them without a flinch. You could have Naruto, said Akeno worriedly. I didn't, he refuted calmly, too calmly for his friends and comrades to understand. You have no self-preservation skills, taunted Conan, as he rolled his eyes at her. I'm an deal with it. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room as all eyes turned to Yahiko for an answer to the mystery as to where the two of them had disappeared after and why Naruto came back with quite a few serious wounds. To everyone's surprise, the usually cooperative Yahiko shrugged in denial. If he doesn't want to talk about it, neither would I, said Yahiko honestly, which earned him glares from the others and an appreciative nod from Naruto, which itself said a lot as to how far both the boys had come in their newly established friendship. But it also meant the ball was back in Naruto's court and he had three angry teenagers glaring at him. Even Nagato seemed miffed for a change, which usually didn't happen. It's better if you guys don't know much, less get involved, he muttered tiredly. And he gets to be? Asked Akeno, the hurt clearly visible in her eyes. It actually made his cold heart feel a little guilty, but he reminded himself that Akeno was building a decent life for herself in The same went for Nagato. If things progressed the way they were, then the Akatsuki was going to be in the center of a brutal world war, and he didn't want his friends to be a part of that storm. This was his fight. He saw potential in Yahiko and the boy wanted to change the world. The moment Naruto saw Yahiko getting compromised, he would kill him or wipe out his memories about the Akatsuki and him. It was harsh, but it was the way he had worked for years. It was the way he had been trained to live and breathe every day of his life. I don't want to fight, Akeno, he said calmly. You're continuing the plan, aren't you? Naruto froze. He cursed Nagato for his far sight. His friend knew him very well to discover the hidden truth. Damn him. Akeno stared at Nagato and then at Naruto with clear shock and betrayal burning in her eyes. Conan didn't understand what was going on and glared at Yahiko, who was her friend, and continued to hide things from her. Why? Asked Akeno in disbelief. You know why, spat Naruto, making Akeno growl. We have to put the past behind us, Naruto. We have a home now, a real home. We can build a future, she urged passionately. And forget everything that has happened. Maybe you can, and it is good for you. But I can't, I won't. He gritted his teeth in frustration and clenched his fists tightly. What the hell are you guys talking about? Hissed Conan. Apparently someone has a vendetta and he is not going to stop, gestured Nagato, making Conan glance back again at Naruto with a pointed look that said talk. He didn't. She glared. He glared back. She scowled. He scowled back. Your AS friend, she insulted, he didn't even flinch. He knew that. Tell me something I don't know already. He jumped from his bed and before anybody could protest he turned into dark smoke and disappeared out of the window. Yahiko also made a quick retreat as both Uzumaki now glared at Conan. You made it worse, they grumbled. It's the truth, she said, but was surprised when they both shook their heads. He's a good friend and you can trust him to have your back no matter what happens, said Yahiko with conviction. He came for me when I was captured despite the odds. He risked everything including his life to keep all of us safe and let us reach Am. He's a difficult person to deal with because of his past, explained Akino patiently. I get the feeling he didn't have a good life, muttered Conan, earning wary looks from the Uzumaki duo. There are concrete reasons as to why we care about him even if he isn't most of the time. If he tells you his story someday, you'll understand him too. Conan blinked on Nagato's words. It only increased the mysterious story of one Naruto Uzumaki and it only urged her to find out his truth even more. If only he allowed people to get close to him to begin with. He silently walked through the streets of Am. He was annoyed. He didn't care if he was completely drenched from head to toe or the fact that he might get sick, or that his skin was getting colder every second. But the brutal truth was that his head was a mess. The mission against Konoha had changed a lot of things for him and he needed to get a grip on himself if he ever was to accomplish his objectives. He had to think, because he was good at that. He had to stop being Naruto and think like the he was trained to be. He had to behave like the candidate of the infamous Hunter program. His fight against Minato had showed a clear gap in their power levels. Sure, he had survived, but it was not enough because for as long as the Yellow Flash and other powerful leaders of Konoha were living, his dream of destroying that village would never succeed. The only way he could accomplish that by becoming more stronger, more better, more faster and more sharper than his enemies. And the only way to gain that was through one way. Training. He took a deep breath as he knocked at the door of the small cottage in front of him. He didn't know why he was here and going to ask someone like her for help. But he also couldn't ignore the need for him to improve. Galatea opened the door after a few moments and saw a drenched Naruto Uzumaki standing at her doorstep. There was a fire in his eyes along with determination which made her smile. Train me. She arched a perfect eyebrow on his request. Granted, teaching him to control his powers was a part of the offer made to him if he offered his services to Am. But Galatea hadn't thought of him ever asking from it by himself and she was never one to dole out anything without a purpose. Much less training. What changed? She asked pointedly, staring him in the eye. Naruto was impressed. He didn't feel an iota of fear in her body even as he gave her a menacing glare. The woman was beautiful yet he knew she could kill him if she wanted to. And right now her dangerous eyes were looking for an honest answer. Anything else and she would kick him away. I met my match, he confessed. The Yellow Flash is a worthy foe. If he was shocked by her admission he didn't show it behind his stony expression. The only way she could have known the truth was if she had followed him and watched it all happen with her own eyes. What terrified him was the fact that he never felt her presence. She must have seen the storm that was raging inside of him as she gave him a mysterious look. Your glory walks hand in hand with your doom, she said earnestly, and saw him steal his gaze. I want to be the best. Can you make me? He asked stonily. I can. But the question is whether you'll survive my training. It will not be the same as the Hunter program. He froze. There was no way in hell she could know about that part of his life. That program was what made him to be the person he was today. It was a dark secret which the peaceful Azu leaders kept hidden from their own clan and the rest of the world. And yet this woman knew about it or was at least pretending to. Am is not a powerful nation. The only way we survive is by being a step ahead of our compeers. Information is the true power in the ninja world. We know who you are and who you were supposed to be for Azu, Hunter, informed Galatea honestly. You're treading on dangerous ground, woman, he warned. She didn't even flinch. Am neither accepts or supports the actions of the Akatsuki. But we are not your enemy as long as you don't let us become one. It was another important lesson he had learned today. There was more to AM and its leadership than he had initially thought. They were good if they had managed to gather this much information and even spy on him without him even knowing about it. The message was clear. You're an asset. A useful one that has great value but one that can be burned off at any moment. I'm a dangerous person, he warned again. You are. But then again you are a young child, whether you chose to accept that or not is up to you. You're not the first person that has suffered or been wronged in this world, but we can see that you're one of the few who has the power and ambition to change the way this world works. But you're not strong enough yet, explained Galatea frankly. I know, he admitted bitterly. Galatea stared at him for several long moments, searching his eyes for answers to whatever questions she had in her heart. Naruto had faced several formidable ninjas in his life and only a handful had the power to keep him on edge. This woman was one of those. Because he couldn't feel a single emotion from her. People, no matter how complex, always felt emotions. Either openly or deep within, but this woman was like the void. The deeper he searched for any feeling, the emptier it got. Then get some rest for now. Domino Squad will get a new mission soon and this one has nothing to do with AM's safety, said Galatea mysteriously. Why do I get the feeling I won't like it? He asked sarcastically. Goodbye, Naruto. He blinked when she s the door right in his face. If there was ever a sign for ending a conversation, this one sure topped them all. And here he thought he was the best, eh? Now not only had he met someone who bested him in power and skill, but also someone that was more colder and harsher than him. It made him wonder. What the hell am I getting myself involved in? Next day. Conan arrived at one of the few precious training fields AM had developed over the years. The fact that a special barrier was spread across the area keeping the rain at bay went to show the importance of these grounds. There were lush green trees spread across quite a few acres and artificial light illuminated many parts of the field. How the hell did their scientists manage to develop this place still remained a mystery for her. It was barely 5 in the morning and she always came here to train herself before any other ninja arrived to do theirs. But today someone had beat her to it. She saw the telltale signs of destruction across the entire battlefield with scores of kunai and shuriken embedded into carefully placed target dummies. There were scorch marks across large patches of the ground, deep craters the size of a small elephant and raging fires in several corners. It was either a disaster or someone was really pissed. She tensed when she felt a pair of eyes on herself. She whipped out her hidden kunai and let it sail behind her back where it clashed with its counterpart with a resounding clang. The atmosphere went ice cold with the air itself turning frosty. She steeled herself as wasps of dark energy swirled all around her like a raging tornado. Flashes of their last battle raged across her mind. She knew one little slip and this ninja could end her, but the same went for him. But to her disappointment, her opponent didn't want to fight right now as he materialized out of the dark smoke. Conan hid back her grimace. It always gave her the creeps when he did that. It made him appear inhuman, not that he would ever care what she thought. They stared at each other and she noticed he was not wearing anything on his exposing his well-toned muscles for her to see. To her credit, Conan didn't let the heat burning inside of her show on her cheeks and instead glanced at him with a calm expression. You seem busy, she said carefully, as he narrowed his gaze at her. I'm not in the mood to talk right now, he dismissed casually, and simply turned around to walk away when he felt a sharp piece of paper graze his cheek. He looked back at her from the corner of his eye even as blood dripped down his torn cheek. The only reason she managed to do that was because he had allowed it. And they both knew it. You're in luck. Because I share that feeling, said Conan icily. Nobody dismissed her like that. Something within her voice made him smirk. The girl had guts and was not someone who liked being pushed around, which he did to almost everyone in his life. Most of the time. Wanna dance? He challenged. She smirked back. I'll kick your A. But where's the fun in that? She challenged confidently. Name your prize then. Something dangerous flashed in her eyes when he said it like that. She saw the sheer uncaring look in his eyes as he stared at her, as if she was not someone he considered as his equal. It infuriated her. The fact that he was an and didn't pretend to shy away from it always got on her nerves. But after Nagato and Akino's pointer yesterday about there being more to him than being a rude person, she was interested in knowing him a little. And if she had to beat him to a B pulp for that, then so be it. I beat you. And you answer a few questions of mine, said Conan directly. Likewise, he agreed. Conan nodded in return. She was right in his personal space in a flash and sent a rough kick straight for his torso. He was prepared for that and simply grabbed her leg and realized his mistake. The leg he had grabbed instantly turned into sharp paper shuriken that pierced his hand cleanly, sending bees sailing everywhere. He flinched but held back his hiss and allowed his chakra to run wild, blasting the dangerous girl away from him. Conan, despite drawing first B, kept her emotions in check, knowing that he could use them against her. And she was not going to lose this match. She jumped when dark lightning strikes erupted from his hands and raced towards her. Conan had to use all her speed and reflexes not to be burnt to a crisp. He used her retreat as a chance to close in while continuing his attacks. A vicious punch connected with her chin as he closed in and evaded her move to block him. She was sent high in the air and he flashed right beside her, ready with a sidelong kick that was already on the way. Conan turned into a paper storm and tried to surround him, but he had anticipated such a move and also turned into dark smoke. Mass of paper and smoke swirled around each other heatedly. They both saw their upper halves swirling in the masses and couldn't help but grin. That was until he saw a series of exploding tags mixed in the storm of paper swirls. He growled, but his voice was drowned among the series of explosions that happened around him. Instead of a few selected explosions, Conan continued burning more of her explosive tags, being fully aware of how dangerous he was. She would not relent until he admitted defeat or was thrashed. She gritted her teeth when she saw her explosions being absorbed by a growing tornado of darkness. Frankly, it was intimidating. She immediately sensed danger and retreated away just in time as a wave of dark chakra viciously lashed out at her former spot. Conan quickly transformed back into her body and saw him doing the same as he landed on the ground. There was not even a scratch on his entire body. The explosions had failed to harm him. She saw him taking out his hidden kunai and returned the gesture. They both smirked challengingly. A clash of weapons it was then. The first pair of kunai clashed against each other, followed by another and another. Conan herself on the losing side of the battle when her kunai attacks were being countered by even more faster responses from him. She gritted her teeth fighting back the pain as she felt quite a few pair of them graze her skin. But none of those attacks were lethal, unlike her explosions before. She angrily glared at him for treating her like a child when she was a trained ninja. He got the hint and rolled his eyes, but she went even more alert when a dangerous glint came alive in his eyes. He made a hand seal and the next pair of kunai thrown by him multiplied into nearly 100 more. They all raced right towards her. He worked fast. Conan turned herself into paper and swirled above the wall of kunai that harmlessly passed below her. However, that left her open for his next attack. She felt lightning connecting with her arm, but unlike the normal attacks of this element, the lightning was dark. The patch of her skin was instantly burned to a dark crisp and she was sent sailing away. It was a grazing blow again, but it hurt like a bee. As she crashed and rolled on the ground, Conan saw him dashing towards her. He had stopped playing around. Too bad she had too. Naruto blinked in surprise when he felt his chakra being suppressed. His eyes zoomed in on the only person in the area. He couldn't believe the sight of Conan kneeling on one foot with her hands clasped tightly. There was a clear sign of constraint and pressure visible in her eyes as she made her move against him. He felt her chakra invading his body, trying to take over his absolute control. It infuriated him. Conan had barely started to gain ground when she felt him go mad. Galatea had been teaching her this move for a few weeks in hopes of either keeping him in check during missions or eliminating him if he turned his sword against a Megakure. Either way, in case Galatea was absent or it was Conan who would be entrusted with stopping the man currently charging towards her. It was dangerous connecting her chakra with his own. It was like clashing two opposing elements, but she did it anyway. However, the technique also exposed her to him completely. She blinked when she felt flashes appear before her eyes. Of a young boy shivering in ice-cold mountains alone. Of a young boy being beaten to a pulp by instructors decades older than him. Of a young boy screaming for his parents, family and friends as he was interrogated brutally again and again by his own clansmen. Of a young boy trying to eat his food alone with his tiny hands twisted at an odd angle. And the next moment the flashes stopped and she saw Naruto Uzumaki inches away from her face. She felt the sharp kunai aimed at her sea begging to be plunged within. Their eyes connected and she knew that she had seen something she wasn't supposed to. She saw something deeply private. And saw all the willpower he was currently using not to take her life right here. Their little match had gone beyond a line and she knew it. Don't ever do that again, he hissed, and she lowered her head. I'm sorry. She could feel the aura radiating off him and decided not to ask anything about the flashes she saw. Or risk having her life ended here itself. Yet, regardless of whether she wanted to or not, she now knew something about him. Specifically, his painful past. She felt him taking deep calming breaths and remained motionless in order to make herself appear as non-threatening as possible. Conan couldn't help but feel guilty for seeing something that was personal to him. She knew if the situations were reversed she would have felt equally or even more pissed if the same happened with her. She might not have stopped hurting him. Damn Galatea for never telling her about this side effect of trying to rein in his powers. He could sometimes be the silent sea and in others be the violent ocean. She had started to see as to how unpredictable he was. Conan relaxed when he removed the kunai pinned towards her sea. They both were breathing heavily and she got a close-up vision of his rising and full-toned sea. And this time her cheeks tinted a little. He saw the impact of the close proximity was having on her and slowly retreated away. Her blush faded but her erratic breathing and hawk-like gaze that was staring at him told him a completely different story. This never happened. Is that clear? Asked Naruto seriously, and Conan saw her chance. I won't say anything if you can just answer a few of my questions, requested Conan. The redhead boy gave her a calculating look and weighed the pros as well as the cons of allowing her that kind of opportunity. Still, she was not supposed to see the memories of the Hunter program. Akeno and Nagato had an idea as to what he had went through in his training, and Conan had just seen the tip of the iceberg. Yet even so those memories were a part of Azu's dark history which he would never reveal to anyone. Not his friends, his clan members or to anyone else. It would change their opinion of their perfect former village. Okay, but nothing too personal, he relented. She faintly smiled but bit her lip. Could you put some clothes on? Asked Conan hesitantly, trying hard not to stare at his sea and his ragged face. She saw him raise a perfect eyebrow as a tiny arrogant smirk played at his lips. No, she glared. He simply threatened to leave which made her huff but getting answers to her questions was more important so she decided to ignore his attractive physique for now. No wonder Akeno was attracted to him. Ask your questions, he pointed, earning a nod from her. Are you ever going to harm my village? She asked earnestly, and stared him in the eye. No. But if your village ever betrays my people or turns against me then I will be left with no choice but to destroy you, he confessed. Conan nodded. It was a fair answer and she was relieved to hear that from him personally. Granted, she knew he would never harm Am as long as a single Uzumaki was a part of it but Conan had a feeling he was a person who kept their promises. She saw him patiently waiting for her next question. Where did you and Yahiko disappear to? She asked seriously, and saw him frown. I will not answer that question for your own good, Conan. And I'd like you to respect my wish, he suggested, making her sigh but to his surprise she nodded in acceptance. What are your plans for today? While he was busy thinking his silence made Conan edgy so she decided to be bold for a change. I'd like you to spend a day with me, said Conan frankly, bringing him out of his thoughts. Why? I am not the most pleasant person to spend time with. I'm an A, remember? He asked sarcastically, but she met his gaze evenly. My request still stands. He stared at her. His eyes took in her entire form from head to toe. She was beautiful for sure, not his usual type but interesting indeed. She was not a pushover and didn't nag him constantly unlike Akeno, and he could choose to not answer her questions without feeling guilty unlike with his friends. She was also a capable ninja and he could respect that. Except for his trainers, no one else had been able to suppress his raging dark powers in battle even a little. She was the first. Granted he didn't want her to see his hidden memories but she had earned his respect with her confidence and bold attitude. Still he couldn't help but mess with her. Are you asking me out on a date, Conan? He asked slyly. The smirk was still plastered over his face. To his surprise she raised a perfect eyebrow of her own and crossed her arms against her sea. No. He smirked a little more on her answer. Alright, meet me at the clock tower in 2 hours. And you'll be paying for the day's expenses, he said flatly. A little stingy, are we? She taunted playfully, he shrugged. I love my money, women. Besides, it's you asking me out on a date, he retorted. He suddenly froze when she invaded his personal space and was merely inches away from his lips. He could practically feel her breath and it increased his heartbeat. It's not a date, she repeated again, although this time her voice had adopted a mysterious tone. Why is that? He asked curiously. He tensed and stopped breathing when she leaned closer and was now beside his ear and whispered. Because a real date would have blown your world. He remained stock still as she whispered those words in his ear almost seductively and disappeared from the area, leaving a faint blush on his cheeks. He tried to calm his erratic heartbeat, but it simply refused to heed his request, so he sighed and his forehead as he whispered. Crazy woman. Yet even so he couldn't help but be intrigued as to what Conan had in store for him. Naruto had a deep frown on his face as he marched back towards his temporary quarters allotted to him by Hanzo himself. His mind was currently preoccupied with a series of conflicting thoughts that had rather escaped his usually sharp memory. Although the sheer ordeal of making sure his clan survived in this world might have distracted him from the important issue. How was Izu's location discovered? And why had the prosperous yet small nation turned into a common target for 3 great villages? Now that he thought about it, Izu had good warriors but not enough to topple the current power balance of the ninja world. They had destructive techniques and ability to produce shinobi capable of holding tailed beasts, but their clan had always employed heavy restrictions on both those aspects. Even the weapons Izu produced were lethal but limited in quantity. Izu had only been a distant ally of Konoha and shared its support in exchange for providing techniques, jinchuriki, and sharing a familiar bond with the once dominant Senju family. After all, both the Senju and Uzumaki were distant cousins which had brought the 2 villages close from the beginning. The Uzumaki clan, while being peaceful, were not naive to the way the world worked. They had created their village in a remote location and set up traps and hidden barriers that had prevented enemies or even friends from ever discovering the true location. Only those invited by the Uzumaki had ever stepped foot in their village. At least that was what Naruto was taught. And yet in the end Izu's location was discovered, the enemy forces reached the doorsteps rapidly without severe losses, taking the clan by complete surprise. There was no time to react, no opportunity to defend, only yes. It all pointed to a possibility that made Naruto's heart go cold. He knocked on the apartment door in front of him and was not disappointed when Nagato opened it. His friend had decided to take residence in the same building, whether that was to keep an eye on Naruto or just be close to him only Nagato could tell. Still, he approved having his best friend near him. Although he was surprised when he also found Akeno sitting at Nagato's couch drinking in her morning tea. The silver-haired teenage girl was equally surprised by his sudden arrival but instantly ignored him and went back to her tea. Unfazed, he took a seat on the comfortable chair in front of her. Both the boys exchanged a nod as Nagato went in to fetch coffee for his annoying best friend. Even though nobody said anything, Naruto didn't miss the air of disappointment or the miffed feelings of his 2 friends after their little spat in the hospital, with him not involving them with the Akatsuki and doing everything alone in secret. Worst of all, he had involved Yahiko but not the 2 of them. He had crossed a line and it had hurt them. When 5 minutes passed, he couldn't hold any longer. He sighed and decided to let something out. It was hard to hold out against the only people who cared about him. For someone who never had a family, having friends like them meant the world to him, and he valued them greatly even if he didn't say that out loud and acted like an most of the time. Frankly, he would have already gone crazy, homicidal or insane after the things he had seen in his F-up life if not for these 2. I have a younger half-brother whom I almost k. Nobody said he was going to be gentle with his little revelation. In return I got S in the end by my own lovely father, he said sarcastically with a laugh. There were the telltale sound of cups shattering in the kitchen and from Akeno's side as well. Naruto couldn't help but be amazed when Akeno's anger vanished in a flash and she was in front of him giving him a bone-crushing hug. Nagato had came back from the kitchen, and while his eyes lacked any pity, which Naruto was thankful for, Naruto didn't miss the small sadness in Nagato's eyes after hearing that revelation. Akeno was a whole different story. While her male teammates and friends were reserved and aloof, she was a bundle of emotions and carried them on her sleeve. It was who she was and allowed her to be a capable medical ninja, not to mention a skilleder as well. Yet Naruto couldn't deny having her warm body pressed against his felt good, so did her hands roaming across his red hair or the fact that she was whispering soothing words in her ears. If it was anyone else he would have pushed them away, but she was the only one who had the privilege of even attempting to comfort him like that. And deep down Naruto felt guilty because he knew he didn't deserve this. For he was an A cold B. No matter his just reasons, he knew he had done some pretty messed up things in his life and would continue to do so. He was a loyal asset of Uzu whose only purpose now was to make sure the people who destroyed his nation paid for it in B. But he would be damned if he dragged these two down with him. They deserved better for even caring for a completely F-up person like him in the first place. He may never say this out loud and act like an most of the time, but he cared about these two more than anything else. They were his home and he wanted to share the good side of his life with them. And if that meant making some concessions and compromises, then he would do it, stubbornly, but he would do it because he knew Nagato and Akeno were worth it. Akeno finally stopped hugging him after a few long minutes, enough for Nagato to take a seat on the couch. "I'm okay, Akeno," murmured Naruto, as she gave him a clear disbelieving look. "Don't lie to yourself, Naruto," she admonished, making him flinch barely. Nagato only gave him a steady look. It made Naruto sigh tiredly. "It doesn't matter what I think or how I feel," dismissed Naruto, receiving a light S from Akeno on the cheek. "It matters to us, eh?" scolded Nagato. "That's right," agreed Akeno, as the redhead in front of them glared at them. To their credit, they glared right back at him to the point when Naruto conceded, muttering, "Stubborn B," which made him smile. Nobody said it was easy being friends with Naruto Uzumaki, but it was worth it because at the end of the day, when S hit the fan and you had no one else, you can trust him to have your back and not leave you alone. On seeing that he was not going to win this battle, Naruto told him everything. Starting with why he took Yahiko with him, what the Akatsuki did to Konoha forces, rescuing the Suna prisoners, meeting his half-brother, the memories he had seen of his mother caring for Obito, and the fight he had with his father who also happened to be the Yellow Flash. To say Nagato and Akeno were stunned would be an understatement. "You should have taken us with you," said Akeno bitterly, but he shook his head. "It wouldn't have changed everything. Just because I am telling you all this doesn't mean I want you two in the Akatsuki. You both are working hard to build a life here and are required to watch out for our younger clan children. I cannot drag you two down with me," confessed Naruto. "Why are you still hell-bent on revenge, Naruto? Konoha Shinobi will not change anything, Uzu is still S," said Nagato frankly, and didn't flinch when the anger flared in Naruto's eyes. "I will never forgive them for butchering our people and our village in the back when we needed them most," shouted Naruto angrily. "And them will change everything," yelled Nagato. Why couldn't his friend understand his quest for revenge would ultimately either him, or if he survived he would never be the same. He would stop being a human, which was worse than death. "Enough." Akeno's stern voice stopped both boys from continuing their shouting match. She glared both of them down and dared them to speak. Not one of them spoke. "You're not going to stop, are you, Naruto?" asked Akeno knowingly. "No." Nagato punched the wall behind him, venting out all his anger on hearing that. Akeno sadly sighed. They saw their stubborn best friend started walking away from them but stopped at the door. He watched them both from the corner of his eye. "I care about you too, but this is the path I have chosen." 1 hour later. It took some time, but after spending years of your life by someone's side you can predict a few of the behavioral patterns. And the Kunoichi currently ascending up the clock tower was a well-trained A. However, she made her footsteps be heard purposefully or risk having the other attack her in defense. To her relief, he was still there by the time she reached the top. What was it with men and brooding? Sometimes she never understood how men could be so caring at one moment and absoluter at other. It was a mystery to be solved for another time. Yet if there was one thing she knew was the fact that most men always tried to keep their troubled emotions hidden. Whether that be sadness, depression or pain. Human society had since the dawn of time heavily implanted the ritual of men being tough and not sharing their feelings. It was much worse in the case of male A. Yet she had seen the lingering darkness and pain in him ever since he returned back to Am. It surrounded him, followed him, haunted him every moment. Loyalty. If there was one thing that she loved about him was the fact that he was fanatically loyal to things he truly cared about. Whether that be his now destroyed village or his only two friends. He would go to hell and back to keep them safe. She could never forget the moment when he had offered to S for Azu by their Azukage's side during their village's final moments. When others were fleeing, he was prepared to S for a nation he had devoted his soul to. It spoke of conviction only the truest ninjas could possess. Nor could she forget the fact that he came for her and the other Uzumaki children. He infiltrated deep behind enemy lines, broke into a secret base, everyone that got in his way, made the scientists about to experiment on his clansmen brutally, and rescued her from a life of horror. She could never forget that. Why do you bother with me so much? He asked quietly, his voice lacking any hostility. Just mild annoyance. Akeno smiled. Because you are worth it. She felt him tense on hearing those words. He was his own worst critic, and the fact that he genuinely believed he was worth nothing truly saddened her. She reached out and gently entwined her right hand with his left one. He didn't resist. And it spoke of how far their friendship had came. They stayed silent for several long minutes as Akeno thought about how comfortable both of them were in this moment. She remembered pushing him to return her feelings in the past and how defensive it had made him. But time had given her perspective that Naruto carried too much baggage from his past that he had to deal with first before he could ever truly live in the future. She had to give him time. But most of all, she didn't want to lose him just because she pushed him for something he was not ready for. After his latest betrayal by his B family, he needed friends. Now more than ever. People who wouldn't betray or abandon him. It hurt, you know. Akeno was quite startled by the confession she just heard. She kept her gaze forward because she doubted she would be able to stop her tears from emerging if she looked at him right now. His voice was so soft and fragile. When I watched Obito's memories, watched my parents care for him, I knew why they left me. And it all makes sense now, he said with a sad smile. Akeno had quickly turned to face him now after hearing that. He saw the sea of concern in those eyes, and something loosened in his sea as he unconsciously squeezed her hand. Hard. She didn't even flinch on his borderline crushing grip and continued staring him right in the eye. I am a freak, I always was from the beginning. I can never be the ideal son they wanted like Obito, and that's why. He left it unsaid and looked away from her. He hated sounding so weak and vulnerable, but she was the only he could share his hurt and pain in this manner. He just wanted it off his sea, wanted to lock it away in darkness so that he could again focus on things that truly mattered. He didn't know why he even believed Akeno might have an answer for his pain. It was not something that could be forgotten or erased, no words even from her would make it go away. Yet even so, he had confessed to her. He slowly felt a very soft pair of lips land upon his own. He felt the emotions raging in her, and without knowing he allowed his powers to connect, letting a torrent of memories flash in his mind. Of the day he met her and Nagato in the academy, of them bunking the first class that was history just because Naruto thought it was boring, of them bickering as to what to eat and where to spend their first day away from the academy, of Nagato fretting over the fact that his parents would K him for bunking his first day. Akeno felt the corner of his lips twitch as his previously tense muscles relaxed. She controlled her surprise when he wrapped his hands around her waist, bringing her closer. She in turn didn't let the memories stop. Of the three of them training and improving themselves, of them graduating at the top of the class, of the team photo they had taken with Naruto brooding, Nagato with a sheepish smile and Akeno smiling widely as she had both the boys wrapped around her arms. The first mission they had and how much trouble they landed themselves in while defending a wealthy merchant from dozens of thugs and bandits, their advanced training for becoming aware Naruto helped her and Nagato extensively due to his prior training experience in the Hunter program. The first drink the three of them had shared after their successful first mission, the sight of Nagato passing out after his first heavy shot, of Naruto carrying his drunk male friend and an equally drunk Akeno back to their homes. Akeno had never intended to make the K, but it was the only way she knew how to show him that he was wrong. That he always had his two best friends, would always have them by his side. That they would always have his back no matter what happened. A memory where the three of them were full-fledged adults and powerful ninjas. Yet even in that smiling perfect picture, she imagined herself hanging on Naruto's back with one hand wrapped around Nagato's end and keeping the shy Uzumaki closer to his still brooding male best friend. However, in that picture, Despite the brooding look, the corner of Naruto's lips displayed a faint smile. She opened her eyes as he leaned out of the K, only to see the darkness and pain in those deep blue eyes disappear and be replaced by his usual annoyed gaze. Better? She asked, completely skipping over the fact that he had allowed her to K him. He hesitantly nodded. She shook her head in amusement. Same old Naruto. Always clumsy in dealing with emotions, but she was used to it by now. Then buy us breakfast, she demanded, as he arched a curious eyebrow. Us. Nagato's waiting downstairs and he's hungry. Naruto felt the pain in his sea completely vanish. Akeno had helped greatly, she always had a way to console anyone. It was a skill he admired her for. But it was the fact that the ever-silent and shy Nagato who he had just shouted at was still waiting for him. It was too much. He really didn't deserve this, not after everything he had done. But yet his heart wanted it. And damn if he didn't want to be selfish. He smiled. Okay, there is this place that serves some good food, he suggested. The predatory smile on Akeno's face made him wonder how much money was going to be left in his pocket. An hour later, Naruto watched Akeno and Nagato finish their breakfast. The past hour had been oddly relaxing for the three friends after their heated quarrel before. Neither spoke of it and the hatchet was buried before it even grew. Although the other two had not missed the permanent scowl fixed on Naruto's face. The fact that he had barely touched his food showed his mind was somewhere else, not uncommon but certainly not a regular occurrence either. What's on your mind? Asked Nagato simply. Even Akeno was interested. For once Naruto decided to be upfront and lay it out for his friends to hear. They were as much Uzumaki as he was and had every right to be a part of this. The Akatsuki was an entire different matter, this was not. Why do you think Uzu was destroyed? More importantly, how was our village's location discovered? Naruto saw the instant shift in his friends. Nagato's gaze hardened as he remembered the night where his village was burned, while his thirst for justice was only against the ones who attacked and not against an entire nation. The anger still burned in his young heart. Akeno was a story of sadness as she remembered all the cries of the S and the S clan members. How helpless she had felt when the Azukage ordered her team and the others to flee. The past few months while being hunted and surviving against all betrayals and captures, this question had evaded them. But not to Naruto, and it was time he presented it to them. Only our people knew about the location of Uzu. Even those few outsiders that visited our village had their memory wiped of that event when they were asked to leave, added Nagato. Then who? Asked Akeno worriedly, and saw a doubtful look in Naruto's eyes. Nagato was glad that he had placed silencing seals around their table corners because he had a feeling his friend was about to reveal something unpleasant and dangerous. What do you guys know about the Hunter program? He questioned. Only the fact that Hunters were supposed to be our first Anbu Black Ops forces. The only reason we even know this is because we were selected to be a part of it just before Uzu was destroyed. But you went into that program training since childhood and were our senior when we were chosen, stated Nagato. Naruto nodded. That much was true. Akeno and Nagato had also started receiving the same training as him when they proved their worth on the battlefield. The only reason he was chosen to be trained in that program at a young age was because of his dark chakra. But alas, their training was not fully completed when Uzu was destroyed, but even that half training had turned his friends into decent A. Uzu had survived in the ninja world for decades not because we had a strong army or weapons but because of information. While we were Konoha's distant ally and never supported any side fully. We did trade with other villages, even the ones that destroyed us. Money, resources, secrets, weapons, jutsu, technology. Our nation was a master in trading in all those things and kept itself prosperous. But how do you think we managed to be the best at that and beat every other village? Asked Naruto slyly. It took only 3 seconds for both his friends to deduce the answer to his question. Spying. He nodded. During my training in the Hunter program a few times I heard whispers about some operations that got our village great information. I never knew the contents of those missions and was smart enough not to ask my trainers about any of those. But I kept my ears open and over the years I continued hearing whispers of the S program, explained Naruto briefly. S program? Asked Akeno in confusion. Before starting the Hunter program, in a time when Uzu was just established alongside almost every other village, our leaders saw the power information had in our world. But in a world full of ninjas and warriors, the art of spying becomes even more difficult. Every ninja village is always on the lookout for foreign spies, so our village adopted a different pattern. Instead of the usual spying ways, Uzu trained groups of very talented children over the years to be the perfect spies. The only difference was the fact that these spies were indeed Uzumaki born but were trained on the soil they were supposed to spy on. What are you saying? Asked Nagato worriedly. These children were born Uzumaki but grew up in nations they were chosen to spy on. They were accustomed to the target nation's culture, its people, its ways, and over the years they joined several key positions in that nation's government, military and industry. Nobody suspected them because they were in that nation their entire lives, but in truth they were working for Uzu as our spies, said Naruto honestly. You mean our leaders brainwashed our most talented children, made them stay away from their families, grow up in a foreign nation and spy for us? Asked Akino in horror. She was more disturbed by the fact that neither of her male friends seemed too appalled by this truth. Even Nagato was silent as he took the truth in. It was the only way our village could have survived through 2 great ninja wars without significant losses, Akino, said Nagato regretfully. It's not right, protested Akino fiercely. This world is F up, Akino, whispered Naruto. That promptly shut her up. She was still glaring heatedly at the table and raining in her anger at their now leaders who had the audacity to order something so inhuman. How long? Asked Akino very silently, which made both boys very wary. This program was in effect ever since Uzu's foundations, confessed Naruto. You're telling me that there could be entire families of our clan living across the entire world in different nations without even knowing they are Uzumaki? Asked Nagato hopefully, but it soon s when he saw the blank look in his friend's eyes. Those spies never had children of their own. They couldn't. They were prohibited. Asked Akino bitterly. They were all sterilized, weren't they? Asked Nagato knowingly. Yes, to prevent our bloodline from spreading in different nations. Akino's hands clenched bitterly and she would have been ready for a litany of curses at their leaders but stopped when she connected the dots and the meaning behind this entire discussion. You think an operative betrayed our nation? She asked hesitantly. They were never told the location of Uzu for safety of the village. But our intelligence officers were in regular contact with them over the years for various operations. All of this could be mere speculation. This could just be some wild rumors I heard as a child. Maybe there are no operatives in every nation working for Uzu. But if it is true, then I can see how Uzu was discovered. There must have been a slip. Either one of the was captured or they turned against us. The rest is history, explained Naruto doubtfully. Makes you wonder that we barely knew the entire truth of our village, muttered Nagato. It still doesn't explain why we were attacked by 3 great villages together. Asked Akino. In their entire lives neither Akino or Nagato had ever seen the sheer amount of guilt and shame in Naruto's eyes as they were seeing right now. The fact that his shoulders slumped and he lowered his gaze was alarming. Because of me. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.